The second prevailing attitude that characterized the days of Noah is the unprecedented accumulation of knowledge. Genesis chapter 4 tells us about the development of mega cities for the first time ever. Metallurgy, art, and sciences. Even if you look at the size of Noah's Ark, and you just think about this, when you think of the size of Noah's Ark, it is comparable to one of our modern-day ocean liners. 450 feet by 75 feet. This increase in knowledge contributed to an increase in self-indulgence, increase in complacency, increase in greed, an increase in luxuries. And indeed what's happening today. Today, the sum total of human knowledge is doubling every 22 months. And that number is getting shorter and shorter, that within a very short period of time, the total sum knowledge is going to be doubling every year. As someone estimated that from the beginning of history until 1845, just to illustrate it in your mind so you get it, knowledge would be equivalent to an inch. From 1845 to 1945, that knowledge was equivalent to 3 inches. From 1945 to 1975, knowledge was as high as the Washington Monument. And from 75 till today, knowledge is now equivalent to the Empire State Building. Just give you an idea of the vast increase in knowledge. Third characteristics of the day of Noah, there was an increase in wickedness. The Bible said that God saw the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continuously. Beloved, that's what brings about the judgment of God. It's evil and wickedness in the world. And today we are seeing more and more men and women are living without regard to God. We are seeing more and more men and women who are living without moral absolutes. And God's judgment could not be far from around the corner. Today there are so many genocides and gratuitous bloodshed all over the world, from Rwanda to Congo to Sudan to dozens of other places. Today we have a whole new generation of young church-going, and call themselves evangelicals, who are minimizing the enormity of the shedding of innocent blood in America in these abortion clinics. Younger generation saying, yes, abortion is important, but it's not all that important. Wickedness generally is on the increase worldwide. You would have to be living in space if you have not seen how within churches, these are churches that once preached the gospel. Within churches, they are de-emphasizing of sin and morality, and they are drowning the people in these so-called Bible-believing churches. Homosexuality is seen as a civil right, not as an affront to God and a rebellion against his created order. Sexual immorality among young, so-called Christian young people is rampant. And as they blissfully rationalize their promiscuous lifestyle, many pastors are winking at it. Not only that, but biblical truth is so watered down that the average person can walk into a church and does not know that it's Jesus alone who can save from eternal judgment. They are no longer part and parcel of church's belief. There's so many of us are called emergent churches saying, you don't have to believe doctrine, you don't have to believe the Bible, you don't have to receive Jesus as your Savior, just to imitate him. Pray tell me, how can you imitate Jesus if you don't belong to him? Today, more and more churchgoers no longer believe in moral evil. They no longer believe in a personal Satan. They no longer believe in the coming judgment. And that is the time Jesus said, when people are living their lives without regard to God and the coming judgment, and that's when he comes suddenly. In the meanwhile, the hearts are being hardened, and are being hardened, are being hardened, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days prior to the return of the Son of Man. And Paul tells us that in these last days, you're going to find Christians who are going to be running around from church to church, from preacher to preacher, from teacher to teacher, looking for what? Looking for somebody who tickle their ears. What does that mean? They're looking for somebody who tells them what they want to hear, not the truth. I'm going to say more about that in the coming days. Fourth characteristic is that they will be eating and drinking, marrying, giving in marriage. Verse 38. What's wrong with eating and drinking and marrying? Nothing. These are gifts of God. Food and drink is a gift from God. That's why we give thanks before we eat. Thank Him for His gifts. Nothing wrong with marriage. It's a great gift of God. I recommend it. So what is Jesus saying? He's saying when food and drink becomes your obsession, when food and drink becomes your focus, when food and drink becomes the master and not the slave, then your priorities are lopsided. When we are obsessed with self-gratification, when the annual money that we spend on pet food, and there's nothing wrong with that, but when the annual money we spend is twice as much as the entire budget of the nation of Uganda, there's something wrong with that. When people get in and out of marriage at whim, there's something wrong with that. When selfishness dominates marriage relationship, there's something wrong with that. When immorality is just as rampant among Christians and churchgoers as it is among the non-believers, there's something wrong with that. And the judgment could not be far away. As it was in the day of Noah, so shall it be before the return of the Son of Man. There's a fifth characteristic of the day of Noah, and it was this. It was mockery. It was a mockery of the preaching of the truth. 2 Peter 2:5 tells us that when Noah was building the ark and inviting people to come and escape the judgment and the flood that is coming, people were mocking him. They were ridiculing him. They were laughing at him. Probably they were saying, poor old Noah, he lost it. We've never seen a cloud, let alone a flood. We don't even know what that is. We are living just like our forefathers lived. Why should we respond to your invitation? Why should we listen to you and get into that ark? And the Bible said for 120 years, Noah preached, warning and inviting, but to no avail. In many ways, that's what Jesus is telling us. That as we invite people to come to Him, as we invite people to come to Christ, as we lovingly warn them of the judgment that is coming, as we lovingly witness to the fact that only Jesus can save them eternally, that only Jesus can change their eternal direction from torment to bliss, that only Jesus is the one who promised freedom from sin and guilt and damnation. And as we do that, we're going to face rejection.